I want to talk a few minutes about professionals and street-level bureaucrats. Richard Stillman describes 5 levels of bureaucracy, what he calls bureaucratic subsystems in the federal government. He lists political appointees, professional careerists, generalized civil servants, unionized workers, and contractual employees. These categories are pretty similar in state and local governments as well, but Stillman was specifically talking about the federal government in his piece that he wrote about that. Each of these has a specific level of delegation of authority, that is, delegated authority and responsibility. Each of these categories is well defined in written job descriptions. I'd like to focus a little bit on a category that Frederick Mosher described as professionals in the public service, and he wrote a book on this subject. And also a broad category that Michael Lipsky calls street-level bureaucrats. Professionals in the public service, which are also called professional elites in Stillman's piece, would include, first of all, attorneys. Attorneys are the most pervasive and influential professional category in government service. There are lawyers in almost every agency and in every level of government, beginning with the topmost levels of the federal government, and then all the way down to local governments in almost every agency. And then another group of professionals are military officers. They're in the armed forces, of course, but also in the State Department and various intelligence agencies, so that there are military officers that are pretty pervasive in the federal government. Almost every government level also includes a lot of engineers, accountants, doctors, law enforcement professionals, and a lot of other groupings of professionals. There's some characteristics of professionalism that include things like the formal education and career training that people have. People who are in the professions are self-recruited. That is, they make a career choice at some point early on about what they want to study and what profession they want to enter. Then secondly, their preparation in school and in training also includes a lot of socialization in that profession, where they learn the norms and the expectations of the profession and how to work together. Every profession has its own credentialing system. It has licensing and specialized certifications that apply depending on what that particular lawyer or doctor or engineer does for a living. Each of those also has a very well-defined scope of services, that is, what they do as professionals and what they don't do. And then standards of practice about how they do it, and that is the level of service they provide depending on what work they're doing. Professions also have written standards of ethics, codes of ethics, and these ethic codes are enforced by the profession. And then there are additional ethics that are required by the government level that they're involved in. Some professions have subspecialties that are specific to government service, but most do not. Most professionals in their education and training don't really have any interdisciplinary education, and they don't have any real public service preparation, like the Master of Public Administration degrees or other things like that. You find also with professionals that their primary loyalty is to the profession. That's their chosen field and their discipline. And then they're secondarily loyal to the government agency that they work for. So they have this dual system of loyalties that they have to maintain. I want to talk a little about street-level bureaucrats. Now, the street-level bureaucracy is the front line of public service. These are the people who work for government, who deal with citizens every day. They're in constant contact with citizens, and so they're called the street-level bureaucrats. This category, this very broad category, includes professionals like teachers, police officers, firefighters and paramedics, social workers, and dozens of other kinds of public service professionals who work with citizens. Street-level bureaucrats have a high degree of professional discretion in the way they do their work. They're always challenged by their workload. People at the street level have more work to do than they can usually get done. They're bound by rules, regulations, standard operating procedures. There's a lot of stuff written down about how they're to do their job and what they're responsible for. and they have to meet the performance expectations of their organizations. Their supervisors are counting on them to do a certain level of work. Their effectiveness in their jobs is also limited by their time and by inadequate resources. Almost every street-level professional would tell you that they have very limited resources for doing their work. At any given moment, they have to determine who to serve and then how best to serve those people who are demanding their services. Michael Lipsky wrote that street-level bureaucrats hold the keys to a dimension of citizenship. He said that the poorer people are, the greater influence street-level bureaucrats have over their lives. For street-level bureaucrats, the work is immediate and it's very personal. It's not at all the kind of impersonal, detached ideal that bureaucratic theory would have us believe. They can't just do it by the book. First of all, the book's not clear all the time about what they're supposed to do and how to do it, and it really never covers the complexity of every situation that they encounter. They have to decide who to treat well and who to sanction, that is, who to discipline. There are these expectations of fairness and consistency in the public service. That is, they're supposed to provide their services equitably to people regardless of who the people are. If they're citizens, they deserve equitable service. They're also supposed to suppress their own personal biases about people, and we all have biases. But in the job, they're supposed to be blind to those differences in people. They also have to have empathy for the situational variations. People expect their services to be tailored a little bit to who they are and what the situation is. And that's required, actually, in what they do. Street-level bureaucrats have to deal with the personal reactions to their decisions. They deal with people one-on-one, and people react differently to what these decisions are that they make. And in doing so, street-level bureaucrats know that they also shape the attitude of citizens toward the organizations that they work for. Now, given all of that, how do street-level bureaucrats cope with the demands of their jobs? First of all, they have to simplify the work, and they do that in a number of ways. They have to set priorities. That is, they have to rank the immediacy and the consequences of the tasks and decisions that they're making. They have to put first things first. They do that in one way by using what's called decision rules. So they create these sort of unofficial rules and procedures that people have to conform to in order to get served. And we all encounter that. Take a number when we walk into the office, fill out a certain form, provide particular information, bring information with you, all of those things. Many times that's not really stuff that's written down in the official rules and regulations, but there are decision rules that are set up in order to make the public servant's job simpler. They also establish routines. That is, they try to approach similar problems in about the same way each time. They do that so that they can ration services equitably. They also do it to reduce the amount of uncertainty and the amount of risk that they have to take in making their decisions. They have to focus the resources that really are under their control. And they also have to manage the consequences of their decisions. One thing that street-level bureaucrats learn to do as they gain experience in their jobs is they try to guide citizens' behavior. That is, the people who they encounter in their work are taught to behave a certain way if they expect a certain level of service. And that's common in street-level bureaucracy. They use their bureaucratic discretion in a certain way, and that's called professional judgment. And we expect it of them. We expect them to have common sense and to exercise good judgment in their jobs. When I use the term street-level bureaucracy, it's not a derogatory term, and it wasn't when Lipsky coined it. It defines a special kind of frontline public servant. Most street-level bureaucrats are dedicated people. They're hard-working professionals. They generally want to do a good job, and they want to go home and be proud of the work that they do.